So I've started working on a little project that I've dreamed of doing for decades. And I'm not going to say that I'm really qualified to engage in this exercise or this project because my Hebrew just isn't that good. But I'm doing it in order to better familiarize myself with the Hebrew of the Tanakh. So, of course, I'm starting at Genesis chapter 1, and then I'm trying to translate the Hebrew into English because English is my primary language. And really, I'm not conversant in Hebrew. I have a small vocabulary. In Hebrew, I can sound out the words, but I, of course, don't always know what the words mean. So, for decades, I've depended on English translations of the so-called Old Testament, and eventually I got to a point where I would disagree with the way different passages or portions of passages were translated. And that's what made me want to work on my own translation. And I think it's fair to say that it takes some chutzpah, some real nerve to think that you're qualified to even make this attempt. But as I said, I don't necessarily intend this for public consumption. This is more to create a translation that I don't have problems with. Now, one of the things I've always wanted to do in a translation like this is to, when there's a word that can be translated multiple ways, is to provide the translations of that word, the multiple translations of that word, so that the reader can see which translation might apply better given the context. So I'm typing this up in Word, and I'm not sure how to add the verse numbers. Whenever I try, it wants to indent the the whole paragraph, and that's kind of annoying because I want it to be left justified. So right now I don't even have the verse numbers. But starting out in verse 1 of chapter 1, for Bereshit, based on the root of Bereshit, I chose the word first instead of in the beginning. Because the word Bereshit apparently is, at least without the b at the beginning is frequently rendered first fruits, but I don't think that the word fruit is in the word in those passages, so that the word there must actually be just first. So the order of creation, it seems to be described as a process, as a day by day process that the Creator is engaging in. So I thought it appropriate that Bereshit should be rendered first. Now, the root of Bereshit can also be Rosh, which means head. And this struck me as meaningful because the Torah can be treated in Judaism as a living person, like a Sefer Torah, an actual Torah scroll, can be treated like a living person, and so that Jews might make efforts to liberate or repurchase a Torah scroll from non-Jewish custody and to bring it back into the fold of the Jewish people. And if a Torah scroll is damaged or perishes, I think this is seen as tantamount to the death of a person. So with the first word having the root meaning head, and with the way the text is arranged on the scroll, it struck me that this first word of the Torah is the head of the person. So it's starting from the top of the person and proceeding downwards. And it makes me wonder if there's a place in the Torah where it says something similar to foot or toes near the end. That would be really surprising to me if that was the case, but I haven't looked into that to see if that's the case. So yeah, the first word, Bereshit, I translated as first. And rather than translate Elohim into some word in English, I chose to keep it as it is and to add a dash so that those who feel like it's profaning the Creator's name, although this isn't the Tetragrammaton. However, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, this word is frequently mixed up with the Tetragrammaton as if the two are interchangeable. That was a study that I did, and that could be an error, a scribal error, but I think it shows how interchangeable the two are. And that was a study I did because someone was suggesting that they're actually two different deities. But the Dead Sea Scrolls makes it pretty clear that that's not the case. That these two names which I'm not sure if it's even. I mean, I know in traditional Judaism, Elohim is regarded as a name of the Creator, but when the word is used to refer also to false gods and even to human beings, I kind of wonder if it's not really just a plural noun. Um, but in this case, it seems to be referring to um, the Creator. So I just transliterated it from the Hebrew because I don't particularly like the word God, because um, it's also the name of a Babylonian deity. So I just like to avoid using that whenever possible. I still do use it sometimes because for main the main not the mainstream populace, but the common populace, that's the word that they're familiar with. So next, I provided two alternatives, either made or fashioned. Um, I took some time with that one. I wasn't completely satisfied with that translation, because in some of the translations seem to suggest as that this was creation out of nothing, whereas other words used to translate this into English seem to suggest the gathering of resources and the forming of them, or the um, fabrication of them, or the manufacture of them. I don't know if that's the right word. Into something, right? So, not creation out of nothing. So, I wasn't sure which word was more accurate. So initially, I decided to go with made instead of created, and then later I decided, okay, yeah, I'll add fashioned as one of the alternatives, because fashioned suggests that it was making out of existing resources. But again, I'm not satisfied with that translation, just because I'm not certain what it is or which is more accurate. So then the next word, the immeasurable heavens, the word Hashemayim, heavens or skies. There was one gentleman, I think his name was Isaac Mosaisin or something like that, and he would talk about how various English or other Western words had their roots in Hebrew. And I believe it was him who was of the opinion that some of these Hebrew words that end in "im" that appear plural, that they're spelled in plural to express that this one thing is of immeasurable quantity or indeterminate quantity or even like infinite quantity. So in the case of Elohim, we know that like the roots of Elohim could be El or could be Eloah, I think. So the Elohim seems strange for a monotheistic God because it sounds like you're making him plural, like maybe we should be translating that gods instead. But I believe it was Isaac Mosiason suggested that maybe what this is doing is it's describing how it is, or we are unable to measure the size or volume or quantity of the thing, whether it's infinite, immeasurable, indeterminate. Now, in some cases, it's obvious that the thing is not infinite, whereas in the case of Elohim, it's possible, probable that he is infinite. So in the case of these other things that could be measured but aren't, because the people who received the Torah at Mount Sinai may not have had the technology to measure these things in any given case. So for them it was immeasurable, and that's kind of why the word thousand or myriad is used to express numberlessness, because it seems like they didn't routinely count that high. So at a certain point, a crowd looks numberless or immeasurable, because either you don't have the time or you don't have the technology or the accuracy in order to count them. So given that the heavens or the skies were of indeterminate size, I added in fact I should do this, since this is, the actual word immeasurable is not there, and this is my opinion, so I'll just put it in brackets to show that the editor added that to the text. So I rendered that immeasurable heavens or skies, and then the next word, the land, rather than the earth. I do not like the rendering of earth as if they knew what the planet's name was back then. They didn't know Earth by the name Terra. I'm not sure that they even knew Earth by the name Earth, given that that's not even a Hebrew word. But they did know the land. The land is what their feet were on. So I just rendered it the land. And the land was, now this is tohu vabohu, and the word tohu seems to have a meaning of vanity or vain or worthlessness or uselessness. And they're saying it's like a desert, the desolation of a desert where it's worthless. And empty is also a possible meaning. So I just added all three. I was initially going to go for just desert, desolate and worthless, and but then when I looked at later on in the verse, another use of a word with the same root, I decided to put the empty back there. So either empty, desolate, or worthless is how I rendered that, and then the next word just seems to be empty. So traditionally this is rendered, I think, in the earth was without form or void. So void, that's like emptiness. And so that seemed like a good translation of that. And darkness, and I really couldn't find a way in which the word darkness was insufficient in translating the Hebrew there, so I just left it as it was. And darkness was upon the face or the front. So that word is like a variation of panim, face, countenance. And so I just translated it the way it's traditionally translated, but then I also added front. And darkness was upon now the word upon, al, it's apparently a kind of preposition, and it seems to be able to be translated all sorts of different ways. I considered translating this as above, and darkness was above the face of the, but then it seemed that if you're talking about someone's face, then you tend to be talking about what's really on the surface of the person's face. So that would be upon. So I stuck with upon, and darkness was upon the face or front of the immeasurable emptiness. I think the KJV translates that as the deep, as if it means like the waters. I think abyss was another possible translation, but the word had the connotation of emptiness, so I just translated it as immeasurable emptiness. It's just emptiness without measure. And Elohim's breath or spirit. I prefer breath because spirit just seems to have a lot of baggage to it. I consider just transliterating ruach right into English, but I wasn't sure whether English speakers really knew the word well enough to get the real meaning out of it. So I just, because of the use of face so frequently here, and knowing that, the Torah is written in human language, I went with an Elohim's breath, and then the next word is only found 3 times in the Tanakh, and it doesn't have any related roots that at least the Strong's Concordance knows of. But it seemed to, like, in one case it's translated as fluttered, as in the fluttering of the wings of a bird over its chicks. The third translation, I, I think it's in Jeremiah, and it says that his bones shaked. But I don't think that is such a good translation based on how few times the word occurs. This is the first occurrence, and those other 2 are the other 2 occurrences. So, and I think sometimes that this gets translated as hover, and Elohim's breath hovered upon the face, based on, I guess, the passage with the bird of prey with its wings outstretched over its chicks. But then that doesn't really work for Jeremiah's passage where he's talking about his bones. So I think that this is better translated as sighed, because it's talking about Elohim's breath. So I think his breath sighed. Like, I would have translated it like lightly exhaled. But I thought that the word sighed was richer in meaning. So Elohim's breath sighed upon the face or front of the immeasurable waters, Mayim. So I like that image because it pictures the creator as a craftsman who is really leaning into some very intricate work, and he's really being attentive to detail in the creation. And just like I mean, it's not necessarily a sigh of disappointment, but just a sigh of maybe like the amount of time it's taking to to do these things. Of course, that's no big deal for the creator, but again, the Torah is written in the language of humans. So I think this is like an expression of the creator's attention to detail in the process of creation of our world. So that's as far as I've gotten so far. I'm just kind of doing one verse per day because, quite frankly, I haven't been studying uh, as much as I would like. And it does take about, I don't know, 10 minutes to half an hour to really look at each of these terms in a verse and what's the word? Is it wrangle? I don't know. Debate in myself as to the best translation of some of these terms. So, anyway, as I make some more progress, then I'll upload another video to show you where it's gone. But again, the important thing for me is that I'm working on building up my vocabulary and my familiarity with the text in Hebrew, and then maybe one day having a translation that is satisfactory to me. So I'll stop here.